All right. Hi, I'm Nick with Weird Giraffe Games, and we are live with Darren and Jason, the designers of Logic and Lore. Say hi, guys.
Hi
Hi,
guys.
everyone.
Hi, everybody. Let's see. Let's give it a minute on chat to see
All right.
if people can
Hi.
hear it. Okay, they can hear it because it just started playing on my computer, and people almost it echoed forever. Um, but yeah, so this is a live stream. We're going to do some questions and answers with the designers of Logic and Lore. First of all, let's talk about where we are on the Kickstarter. As of today, we've got 8 days left to go. So we're getting down to the last week here, and we're at about 1,200 backers, $65,000. We have just met our latest stretch goal at 65K, which is exciting. We've met so many stretch goals so far, which is the final countdown mode. I had a chance to playtest this earlier last week, and it was super fun. Adds a lot of tension to the game. Our next stretch goal is at $80,000 to get shiny foil on the tokens. Those tokens are going to look super amazing. Um, so let's go ahead and get started with talking about Logic and Lore. So for people just discovering it, guys, can you give us like a quick story of Logic and Lore from when you came up with the idea to our Kickstarter on 2024, selling out last year? So how did this come to be? Maybe let's
That's a,
start.
that's a lot to talk about in a
Let's
minute.
Yeah.
let's talk with Darren. Yeah, what do you think, Darren?
Yeah, so it got its start in 2021. Um, we had just a basic idea of like, what if we had 7 cards and they were numbers, and let's put them in a line. And we talked about it over breakfast for a couple days at Gen Con, which that was the Gen Con that was in the middle of the pandemic. So it was a weird Gen Con for sure. So we had a lot of time to talk to each other because we weren't around as many other people. So yeah, let's put these cards in a row, and we fiddled with it, and we had like an action economy thing, and it didn't go anywhere, and we just set it aside for like 9 months after that, and never looked at it. And then about 9 months later, the summer was coming up, convention season. We pulled it back out. We said, "Is there
So we had a
anything
lot of time to
here?"
talk to each
And there was something there that we thought was pretty cool, and so we showed it to Weird Giraffe in 2022. Fast forward a long time, it had its first Kickstarter in it was 24, right, Nick?
Yeah,
2024.
2024. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, 2024 and fulfilled in 2025. It was super exciting to see it launch at Gen Con. And like we got to be in the booth at Gen Con on top of each other's shoulders practically. It was a very crowded booth, but it was a lot of fun seeing people see it and get excited. And, it was fun to see them get excited because we were excited, right? Like we were excited that this game made it out there, and it was important to us. And we thought it had a little bit of magic in there. And it's fun to see people like discover the magic. And now here we are. We sold out of the first one. We're onto the second printing.
Yeah. So Jason, let's talk a little bit more about Gen Con and PAX Unplugged. What were you feeling there? I know you guys both had a chance to be at the booth and talk with people about the game. What was your sense? What were you feeling? Was it what you expected based on like what you guys came up with, or was this something completely different?
I don't know that we knew what to expect. This is our first design that was like wholly ours and not based on another game. So we did some unmatched content that was based on someone else's system. So this is the first time that we had the opportunity to design something from scratch. And I also got to do the art on it, and that we'll talk about a little bit later. So that first time when there's a rush of folks that have heard about the thing that we've created and are coming up to us and asking questions or seeing it for the first time, and we're stopping because of the art, it was just it's a truly magical feeling. So like that's why you get into game design. It's definitely to have folks respond and to like feel that energy um, coming back to you is great. And then getting to give demos on those first opportunities was so magical when someone would say, "Oh yeah, but look at this art," and they had no idea that like a lot of folks didn't know that we were the designers or that I was the artist. and to get to hear that stuff and it be so genuine. And in game design, you get a lot of opportunities to have friends or family members look at your stuff and give you a pat on the back. But it is so different when it's the public and you get to see actual delight in folks' faces. And yeah, just generally just a magical feeling.
That's awesome. So like just you mentioned that this was like one of your first designs and you've got a few other designs out there. Can you just like give us a little bit of backstory about like Dirtle Games? That's you guys. Where did that come from? And what did you guys do like before today? Like if somebody was meeting you for the first time, who would you say you are?
That's a hard question.
Yeah, our origin story really comes from needing an opportunity to connect with folks during the pandemic. Darren and I were playing weekly through the top 100 on BGG, and then one week we saw a design contest for the skirmish game Unmatched, and we're like, what if we spend our time working on that design contest? So then we ended up working and submitting something for a design contest, and that did well. And then we were like, how are we going to spend our time? So then we designed a co-op mode for their game that they didn't ask for, and Darren was able to get us a meeting, and now that's a cooperative game that's big out in the world. And we knew that that was going to come in a few years, so we're like, how are we going to spend our Wednesday nights? Maybe we should come up with other games so that we could strike while the iron's hot when those games came out. And we had a lot of like initial failed attempts, but Logic and Lore was the first one where we're like, oh wow, we found a little bit of magic, and because of that, it's always going to be close to our heart. So that's a little bit of like the origin of us starting to design in 2020 and to get us to right now. And the name Dirtle just means to it's like an old Magic the Gathering term where you spend a lot of time playing a game but not accomplishing very much.
Mm.
So it's a little bit of just like a little levity, and it's a fun word to say.
Mhm.
So how did you guys get to design together? So Darren, like, how did this start? Where did you know Jason for forever and then just start playing games with him, or how did that work?
So the deep lore here is Jason and I worked for the same company. However, it was a big company, so we never met each other. And then Jason was leaving to go do a new job. He got a new job. He was leaving. I came in to take his place. So for 2 weeks, he was telling me how to do the job that I was taking his place at, and we talked about other stuff than just the job at hand. And I found out he was in the games, I was in the games, and then like the last day or something when he's leaving, he kind of like sheepishly asks like, hey, "Have you ever want to play some games? You can get something you can like text me or something." And I was like, "Don't stop making it weird. Just give me your phone number." Um,
That's your
and
meet
so
cute.
yeah, it was a meet cute. It really was. And I'm a long time game group organizer. So like organizing a get together to play some games with somebody was easy peasy. And so we did. And we did that and we hung out, we played games, and then we joined a sports league together. And that's a whole nother hour's episode right
Wow.
there.
Yeah.
Dodgeball archery. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dodgeball
That's a,
archery.
yep.
That
Darren was
sounds
in
Full
that.
name.
amazing.
Darren was pictured in the Wall Street Journal, so look that up.
Yeah.
Oh
Yes.
wow. Deep cuts.
If
That
you look up archery dodgeball, I'm pretty sure my picture comes up.
I'm gonna Google that, and that will have to be episode 2.
Yes.
All about archery
Uh,
dodgeball.
But yeah, I guess we could say we're friends now. I think it's been 10 years. It might be okay.
Yeah, it counts. Yeah.
It counts. Yeah, so
Awesome.
that's how we got together, and ever since then, I think for 5 or 6 years straight now, we get together at least once a week to work on game design. We keep that
Awesome.
cadence alive.
So you guys are both in the same area, and so you're able to like meet up in person. What does so Darren, like, is there anything that you do for game design to that works with Jason? Like, how does that balance happen? Do you guys tend to design together, or do you come up with ideas and like pitch them off of each other? How does that work?
That's a lot of how it works. Yeah, Jason has more ideas in an afternoon than maybe I've had in my life. But sometimes some of the stuff he says like really hits, and I see I'm like, oh, there's something here. I can chase this for a little bit, and then I'll pick it up and run with it, and then I'll show like, hey, I put this together. What are we thinking here? I tend to do a lot of the prototype mock-up, get stuff set up in TTS, get playtest organized, things like that. Some of the businessy sides of things I will take care of, like just so Jason doesn't have to deal with it. And of course, Jason does all his art. So I don't know. Over time, we've just kind of like separated out some responsibilities, even though a lot of them do overlap still. So it's just worked out nicely.
Awesome. So Jason, how does the art like affect your game design? Because traditionally in games, you've got an artist, you got a graphics designer, you've got a game designer coming up with the mechanisms, and those are different people. So with you being both the artist, graphics designer, and the game designer, how would you say that that affects the way you think about have interweaving all of those different aspects in your game that you design?
There are positives and negatives. There's a whole lot of positives in that, like, everything is a little bit more rapid than it would be otherwise, and everything looks a little bit more polished otherwise. So our pitching process is typically a little bit easier because our stuff can look a little bit more product ready, and we can make a little bit more decisions on what an item could look like in the market a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
to understand that this is not just necessarily an idea in our head, but something that someone else needs to agree to marry. Um, so that's useful. The downside is sometimes when you have some of those inclinations, you'll fall down rabbit holes. So the amount of thrown away elaborate art that I have would, fill a hard drive for sure. So that part is good and bad. But I mean, I can actually give some visual examples for those that are watching the stream too. So originally, before it was called Logic and Lore, we pitched it under the name of Constellé, which wisely was changed to Logic and Lore. But like whenever one of the benefits that we have is like we can make a trifold brochure of different like game designs. So then we're able to have, for those that are familiar with pitching, you want to have like a sell sheet. So we're able to have something that looked pretty uh, pretty reasonable as a product in those early conversations, and it makes those conversations a whole lot easier.
Mhm.
To the point that with a lot of the art that's in Logic and Lore, that that was a time where we didn't know whether or not folks would pick stuff up. So even more time um, got used for the art. And you may notice this is prototype art, and like some of those textures remain in the final game. So some aspects of the prototype from Logic and Lore are absolutely still in the game. Like the cardback is similar, the name is different, but you gain a lot of benefits to being able to have that. A lot of folks will say that you shouldn't do much art on your prototype, and that's true for the fear that I discussed, is that you just like spend way too much time or money on something that you have to throw away. But if you're willing to like develop the visuals, then it sure does help a conversation.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the game would have done as well or been as attractive if we didn't have, the art that wasn't that prototype. Um, for those that are looking at the Kickstarter, you can buy a playmat. We had a playmat. Like
Hmm.
we
Yeah.
spent too much to have it produced and shipped quickly so we can have it for Gen Con. And I still have it sitting right next to me here. I still use it all the time. Like that playmat, I'm sure was in the decision. It was in Weird Giraffe's mind when they were making a decision on this game.
Yeah. So you guys can't see, but I'm holding up the play mat, and it is giant, and it looked beautiful. And I don't think it's really changed much since your prototype, besides for adding like the logo onto it.
There's been some color changes and the logo
Oh,
changed.
okay. Yeah. So now viewers can see both. This is the final version that I've got and prototype that Darren's got of the playmat, and you can see how big it is because of the beautiful giant tarot cards that you have to put it
Yeah,
9 tarot cards next to each other. So you have to have a giant playmat. You cannot
A lot
fit
of
this
real
in the
estate.
box.
Yeah.
what a fun decision it was, and like fortunate that we switched to tarot cards. Even from a themey standpoint, we always thought like starry and like kind of witch core almost type of fun tarot, but also it helps with being able to hold up cards to ask questions. So mechanically it ended up mattering quite a bit, and it also adds to like that table presence of the game, that when it's shiny and folks have a chance to see it, it just like everything kind of came together. So yeah,
Yeah.
that mat is big, but it
It's a
was
great
worth it.
it's a great mesh of like mechanics and theme, because like when you are doing your deductions, when you're going through that process and the cadence of questions, like you get like that meditative thought process
Mhm.
that is not too dissimilar to people who do their own tarot readings, right? Like the pondering and the contemplation and the cards in the art. Like it's a nice, it fits together nicely.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's amazing. So you guys, when you pitched it, it wasn't tarot cards. Was it just normal?
It was.
Oh, it was
No,
tarot card. Okay, you
yeah,
guys. Okay,
Jason has them, yeah.
there they are. Yeah.
yeah. I
Um,
even had some like yeah, some original print pages and stuff.
oh
I
wow.
found my old box of of prototype stuff. I never throw anything away.
That's awesome. Yeah, so when you guys came up with that interesting hook, so did that tarot reading inspire kind of the mechanism that you don't get to see your cards, that other people tell you about your cards? How did that come to be?
It definitely was in there. So at the time we had played Fugitive, which is a Tim Fowers game. So if you don't know Fugitive, Fugitive is players playing cards into a line. Some of them are face up, some of them are face down because the two players have different roles. And so the idea of like, what if all the cards were face down and you're trying to figure out what they were, organize them in some way. So yeah, that played into it for sure.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that type of like secrecy and like figuring out a mystery, it kind of made sense. Yeah, I feel like around that time I had played a lot of like Tellstones by Riot Games, one of their like strange like pseudo memory games, and we'd seen a lot of like design prompts from like Button Shy, so we had done a bunch of just like very small amount of cards. So it became, I think that Darren came with the original pitch of just like, here's just some numbers, how can we make a game of just placing these in order?
Hmm.
And then, like mentioned before, we had some action economy where some cards were face down, face up, much closer to like a Tellstones type of system. And then it wasn't until like 6 months later when we were, again having a meal, this time with chicken wings, and like that waterfall nature and that like Hanabi, you were not allowed to see this, but the other player could be the system that you were like bounce against to like return your information.
Hmm.
That came about, and then everything just came downstream of that. Was like, well, if they're the person that's you're returning all of these queries from, then it gets to be a little bit more logicy, a little bit more like a computer program of if then statements. And can that be interesting? And then mechanically it immediately worked. And then like, how can we find out how it can emotionally work?
Hmm.
And then we realized that one of the best ways, instead of it, we're just playing this siloed puzzle, that if you create some type of brinksmanship at the end, when there's this tension of the game could end, and either player can kind of trigger that moment, then like everything kind of came together. That like mystery became pressure, became release. It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
In a lot of deduction games, there is an answer to what you were trying to deduce, right? And when you see that answer, the game is immediately over. Well, when somebody sees the answer, your particular part of the game is over because now you know what the answer. So I think one of the differences we made is like, what if everybody else but you knows the answer,
hmm
right? What if your opponent knows the answer or knows you're getting close to the correct thing the entire time? It doesn't impact your game, so they can tell you this information from these questions.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that you guys have kind of figured out maybe the quarterbacking problem in some other games where um, you may accidentally reveal information, but it's really bad if you accidentally reveal information. So your self-interest in this game is to protect the information. You want to try to hide your reactions when players pick up cards, which I think is really a neat way to kind of solve that quarterbacking problem for co-op games, is make it in the self-interest of players to not actually reveal the information. So you're only penalized by your opponent gets ahead of you. It's really neat.
Ahead is relative too, because we have some longtime playtesters, and they are good enough to play their boards incorrectly, to know that it's incorrect, keep things in the incorrect spot to throw off their opponent.
Wow.
And then late in the game, they'll just have a turn where they're like, I'm going to move this, because I know where these actually go. Align the stars, I win. And you thought they were way off. They knew exactly what was going on the entire time.
Yeah. Wow. So there's some super deep strategies in this game. For folks who don't know, Logic and Lore will most likely be on a tournament type of track next year, starting in 2027 with a championships at Gen Con. So there's some super deep strategies for the competitive play, with some amazing cool prizes. So that's going to be super exciting. We haven't really announced that yet, but if you're watching,
I think I
sneak
think you
peek.
just did.
Yeah. So it was some interesting. Like somebody mentioned recently, Jason, that it, I think this may have only happened because you were also a designer of the game. That the 6 and the 9 in the game actually look different, and you can tell them apart. Some Oftentimes you have to put a line underneath one to tell which one is which. But how did you come up with that idea?
That was definitely iteration. I'm sure that I have some that are mistakes in some of these early versions, but it became to the point that our earliest version of the game was actually 0 to 8 instead of 1 to 9 to avoid the problem entirely.
Mhm.
Wow.
But because it created some difficulties in some of the questions, for instance, like asking about the state of odd or even with some numbers, and zero is always one of those that like everyone needs to agree. So we and 1 to 9 became just a much easier ask, and then it just became a kind of a graphical fix, and that was eminently more reasonable. So yeah, that's definitely something that was thought about quite a bit.
A lot.
Yeah,
A
Yeah.
whole lot,
honestly, I think
yeah.
it might be one of the most important innovations in game design ever come about by this game is a way to show 6 and 9 as different without using the stupid line that because the stupid line makes the art and graphics just look terrible for games that require that. But
We
I think you've
also,
stumbled upon some innovation here.
I mean, credit also to Jason for we have the number twice on the cards, right? That way you always have the card the correct way up.
Hmm.
Because we played not that way, and then we had people, doing one of these, like, what number is that? It's like, okay, this has to be on there twice. And so for people who maybe are looking at the game for the first time, like there's a lot of reminders on the card about which one it is, right? There's like the number, there's the moon phase, there's the color, there's the dots at the top of the card. Like there's a lot of it tells you like four different ways what the card
Mhm.
is.
Yeah, some unspoken versions, like for instance, the question symmetry, which asks whether or not the two numbers are equal distance from the center. And another way to think of that on a number line of 1 to 9 is do the numbers add up to 10? So that if two numbers are um, equal 10, they are symmetrical from the middle of the board on either side, and they're the same color. So the board is like segmented right down the middle. So if it's one card's orange, then the other orange card is also the other side of the symmetry. And we never call that out or bring it up, but we try to fit as many things like that as possible, just so that while you're doing all of the harder work of all of the logic information and negative information, you can, kind of focus on that and not just the state of the game.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
love how there's so many little Easter eggs in there. In fact, I do reveal that sometimes during demos, and people are amazed. Like, how could you add those numbers up so quickly? And I go, oh, well, it's just the same color. It makes it super easy to answer that question.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep. And the first time that you mention to someone that a five can never be involved, you're like, oh, that's right. If these are symmetrical, neither can be a five. There are all
Yeah.
these like small little wiggles in the system that, as you become familiar, you're like, oh wow, I am growing in an understanding of the system. Whereas it feels superficially just you know pretty simple. Like, wow, there's some emergent depth in there, some that we didn't expect, but then when we found it, we kind of tried to like steer that direction like
Yeah.
further.
I think so. Darren, what's your favorite question to ask in all of those?
Ooh. Um, that is a good question. So the one I like the most when I get a response for a yes is the symmetry question, uh, because you've pretty much got the other one locked in if you figure out the first one, right? Which is great because then you can lock it in and never have to deal with it again. Also, it gives you can ask questions against that one, which I like quite a bit. So maybe the
Yeah.
symmetry question would be my
But
favorite.
but the chance is so low that you get that correct.
Hmm.
Just
Sure
so
is.
it's definitely a risk. Um, so that brings up a little bit about let's talk about the different modes and how the order of the questions really influences how the game is played. How did you guys come up with like the symmetry question should be after we ask about neighbors on Starlight? Can you talk about like those, and how did you play test that and figure out that it was important to have that order?
So let's start with like the initial premise, which is when you get a yes, your turn is done, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
was in the game pretty early. So you start with alignment, and then you ask questions, and then when you get a yes, you're done. And then the final one is always which one is greater, because that one always has an answer. So we are not we weren't math majors or anything, but we did go through and do some math on every question that was in there. And from the premise of, if all things are equal, if the board is random and you're at a starting state, what is the percentage of chance that this question hits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the more likely ones are at the top, the less likely ones are at the bottom. However, like the impact of the less likely ones at the bottom is we consider a greater positive impact to you solving the puzzle than necessarily the earlier questions. So when you ask an order, like if you're playing Star Bright, which we haven't defined yet in this conversation, but when you're playing Star Bright, those earlier questions are more likely to hit. The later questions are more impactful towards your game state.
Yep,
Yeah.
and all of that with the understanding that the last question is special. And if you were to ask me my favorite, it would definitely be the greatness question,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the fail case. It's what lets the game like proceed and for you to always get positive information. So its likelihood of hitting is 100%. And it's one of those, it's just like a linchpin of the system, is that you, no matter what, you can always gain a little bit on every turn and not feel like you're spinning your wheels. And then everything before that is like a cascading amount of information versus its efficacy if you get yes. So
Yeah.
sometimes you're really excited when you hit those rare shots, and yeah, but
It's
the other ones can give you too much information, so you really can feel both sides as you're playing the game.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting where you strategically may want to skip some questions because you want to like kind of get that more particular information if because as the game state goes, and Darren, you mentioned the math is like, okay, it's brand new board random, but as the game state goes, you can actually set up your boards where it's 50-50 that it's symmetric. So I'm going to go straight to that symmetry question, which is really important in Star Bright mode because you mentioned there's there's 9 different questions, and then it's more of a worker placement where we're claiming different questions, and you may want to strategically set up your board and then claim the very specific question. So how did you guys come up with the fact that there's multiple modes in this game, Starlight and Star Bright? And did you start off with the aim that you could play on different modes, or did you guys kind of figure out that you could play Starlight, I could play Star Bright, and it just works?
It just works is a really good way to describe the development of this game,
Right.
generally. So like so many things in game design, there's a lot of iteration and a lot of parallel paths that felt equal. So as we were deciding how to pitch this game, we saw in this a version of the game that is, significantly more kid friendly. That's maybe just like numbers 1 to 7, and it becomes a very, very simple like pseudo memory game. And then we found this kind of middleweight, and then we thought, is there a more complicated version of this that like would scratch like all of the cool logic itches that like more complex Sudoku would? And so then we prototyped that, and we're like, wow, that really works in the same like structure. Which do we pursue? And then we realized that the cost of the change in the system was just flipping over cards in the middle, and it became, wow, like this
Yep.
is why wouldn't you do both of these things if they both work? And through our playtesting, we found folks that were delighted by both.
Mm-hmm.
So I still play Starlight, the like the initial mode, more than any other mode, but there are folks that's not the case. They want more out of it, and they want to immediately hop to that more elbowy experience with like kind of deeper logic and options. And yeah, we just wanted to pursue both because it delights different folks.
There's also more than 4 questions in the world, right? So with Starlight, you
Yeah.
have those 4 questions you work with. Well, we had a list of 20. It's like, well, what are the best ones here? How would we incorporate them into the game? And what we found over time is that the logic and lore system is incredibly robust and can handle most of the things you throw at it. Even when you don't think they should work, they still will work.
Mm-hmm.
We have other game modes and other extra mode cards that we are not published, that they just exist on paper somewhere, and they still work. Like we came up with a couple new ones just last week.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah,
system is not, we are not done exploring what this thing can do.
you just keep throwing different stuff at it, and you're like, this surely won't work. And we play it, and we're like, this is engaging. What are we doing? Like, why why wouldn't we share this too? Because this feels as valid of a path as the others. Especially like, so right now, Logic and Lore is structured into like you have a base mode like the Starlight or the Star Bright, or now with the expansion variants, and those are kind of like these like base like root
Mm-hmm.
switches of the system. And then on top of that you have the black hole system, which are like all of these like little bit of like almost like sprinklings of like salt and pepper on top that you could add to any of those root modes. So we really have the, you know, we just found that like it just didn't break the system because that core is so solid that just can you put these in order with a system of like discrete small answers. So it became like, you know, and we also create an opportunity to let somebody lie once a game. So now we have a card in there that if you want that type of gameplay, you know, there's a certain folks that really love that. And now just with the inclusion of one card, you can really shift the game quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of find the way that you love it.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about those extra modes. That was that originally part of the design process? Did you guys kind of get this core game, and then, like you were saying, it could just, well, like what if we threw a zero in there, which is a black hole, basically, or what if we threw a red giant, which throws off your deduction, like where you get a yes to any answer because it's a giant, basically a giant number. How did that come about?
I think that that's more like parallel design tracks. So I can remember one version of it where like, what if this game was like Princess and the Pea, and there was one thing that was different than everything else, and it can't quite be answered, but it received a no, so it feels like the other ones. So you're trying to determine, you know, where that pea is on the mattresses, if you recall the like the children's story,
Mm-hmm.
and that really is what the black hole is. So then, you know, as we explored that like parallel path, then we just came back to the center. Like inherently, we can have non-number cards in here, and what would that mean?
Mhm.
And then we just realized that there's just a lot of design space for like these 9 cards don't have to be these 9 cards. You could sub things in and out. And then as soon as we found like the black hole system of here are some cards that always return no, and we realize that we don't have to keep a symmetrical board with 2 different players, so my puzzle can be harder than your puzzle. Now I was able to, because I have a lot of experience with the deduction games, I was now able to play like a very engaging game with my younger children, that they wouldn't have the black hole cards as their additional hurdle, and how it worked, and it felt right.
Excellent. So we talked a little bit about how it was tarot inspired, celestial inspired. Let's talk, Jason, about the art of logic and lore. And how did we get to having like celestial dragons, and how it ended up in the final? And then maybe if you could talk a little bit about the pieces that you did for the game, which are now going to be featured inside of the box, so you'll have a beautiful piece that really is frankly like cut to be on the front of the box cover, but it's an immensely, I think, beautiful piece that you've got with the mice and dragons. I'm really excited for people to see without the logo covering it up. So
Mhm.
how did you come up with that idea, Jason?
Thank you for the kind words, firstly. And a lot of this came from Carla and the Weird Giraffe side, because you know this is a follow up to the world of Wicked and Wise, and the dragon and mouse theme was already there with the beautiful Beth Sobel art. And the moment that we pitched this game, I was in the tabletop mentorship program as an artist with Beth Sobel.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was meeting with Beth every week, and then I was like, so Beth, I know that we've been talking about the art that I've been doing for this prototype of Constellate and how to get better and how it works. And I got to, like, she's wonderful. I got to say, I might actually get to do the follow up to to your art in that same world. So we wanted it to feel kind of similar, without not being exact. And it was fun to get an opportunity to just kind of play in that like more illustration side. So as a result, I've gotten to like paint a bunch of dragons and mice, and with a bunch of wise words from Beth Sobel. That was pretty great. And for the cards themselves, getting to work with just like different textures and stuff. It was all, yeah, it all felt pretty good.
Wow. So it's like a literal, like Plato and Aristotle. The
Yes.
student becomes the master,
I don't know
and
about that.
studies
Beth is-
from Beth. Wow, I didn't know that. That's really an interesting story. Is there anything that you took away or learned from Beth that you didn't know before? Like what was the biggest kind of takeaway that you had from that process?
I mean, that my golds looked like too much like greens was
Oh,
but generally there's just a whole lot of just like making sure to work at things at the correct scale so that you make sure that it read okay, to like work on the silhouettes of items for covers, making sure that the big features were the most important, and rendering at the correct amount. And and then I get to bring other things that I thought were fun to it, because the cover of Logic Lore, like the number of stars, like that is the Draco constellation. So we got to actually like put some accuracy in like the shape of those stars that were on the cover. So getting to do getting to both have those conversations with someone that has been through it and has had so much, like she's just such a good influence, and incredible. I have like pages of notes from our conversations, but then also getting to like develop it further and bring something of myself to it felt really great. And I'll give you an example. You mentioned the red giant before. When it came to like doing the art on the different modes, I found an opportunity. Like I had painted a mural in my kiddo's bedroom years ago that was space themed. So there's this just enormous star that, and that is the star that's on that card. So every time we get to bring that card out, it is now this permanent reminder of a mural that's on the walls in my kiddo's room. So getting to feel that direct connection, it really makes you feel like a lot of yourself gets poured into a game like this. I know it's just cards and a little bit of a thinking experience, but I can remember that first conversation after the pitch with Carla, walking through the streets of Gen Con, because I thought that the art would just get thrown away and it wouldn't be the direction that we would go. And I can remember like walking through just like smiling with tears in my eyes, because it was a really exciting moment for me.
that's amazing. Let's talk a little bit about, you also did the art for Variance. Um, and the box cover for Variance features a little bit of different things. It's got ravens on it. So how did you come up with kind of putting the ravens in where they're at, and that, and kind of the balance between making it look different enough but also look like it's in the same universe or same line as the base game? How did that process go?
That well, there's a few things. One, I think that yourself and Carla helped quite a bit with that like story of like these are things that are going out and grabbing information and getting to have these kind of like like these. So whereas the mice were like really terrestrial and the dragons were stellar, the ravens got to kind of be both of those things. They got to both be close and in the foreground, and also like going out to get the information, um, which definitely felt right. And when it came to like the actual nitty gritty production of it, I got to open up the canvas of the original art and then just like expand the canvas to the side and be like, how can we like connect these two so that it would feel like a continuation. So like the one edge of the sky from the first one became the start, and then it
Oh.
kind of pushed through. So then, other than like the you know designing around where the most important items are going to be on the page, like where the logo is going to be, if there's going to be a window for the dice,
Mhm.
making sure that nothing fights that. Um, was definitely like top of mind, but all those other factors going into like here's the space that we have, how can we play and how can we develop the story a little further was really fun to work on.
Yeah, was that so? We did kind of come with a little bit more constraints on you for from the publisher side of things. Like we really truly wanted people to be able to see the dice from the outside of the box because the Kickstarter backers I think are going to get us to a really cool dice color. People are proposing colors and we're going to go vote on it in the end of the campaign. So was it more difficult or maybe easier on you to create art when you had constraints being pushed by the publisher? I think you had a little bit more freedom for the base game in working with Beth, but for variants, we kind of came in. Here's the story. Here's what it has to be in this size, this window. How does that work when it comes to making art?
I love constraints. So constraints are, I think, always almost always going to help, especially that are restraints with purpose. So that was a really good exercise, and it led to a lot of good simple thumbnails, and really just came together pretty quick. So I mean, it did mean that there are areas of the box that don't need the level of detail necessarily that some other would, because it'll likely be cut out. But we knew that we wanted to make this art for other purposes as well. So it was fun to get to develop the story of, like, if you watch, you can kind of see the ravens kind of extend into the distance, and they kind of curl around, and you can see the trails, how they kind of start to mix with the dragons. So you know, you start from, I mean, it's like a haiku, right? You
Yeah.
limit the space, and then your creativity gets to bloom.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. At least from my side of things, I think it looks like 100,000 times better because you know like what the game is supposed to do and what the game is supposed to feel, and you then can bring that into your art. It's I think amazing art. I love it. I cannot wait to get this on a poster and put it on my room. And hopefully in the future we can have those for sale so people can do that as well.
Thanks for the kind words. Yeah, I'm really proud of it.
I
Yeah,
do have a poster of it up in one of my rooms in my house.
very nice. I'm so jealous. Yeah, I want to get it over there on my space wall. Um, so speaking of being proud, like Darren, what are you most proud of in this design? Like looking back on it, like what do you think was the best thing that you guys came up with, and um, what are you most proud of in this situation here?
um, I don't know that we set out to originally do this, but we ended up with a game that was competitive yet not adversarial.
Mm.
And in the two-player space, that's a little challenging to do. Some of the great things I see when we do conventions or bring it out, play tests or local groups or whatever, is people playing very intently, but also talking to each other during the course of the game about, the cards that the other person is working with.
Hmm.
Even though one side is carefully not giving away too much information, but they will reason through the other person's puzzle at the same time that they're reasoning through their own puzzle. In playtesting, one of my favorite stories, which I'll censor for the sake of the stream. One of my favorite stories is somebody got a symmetry correct, and like they just made a big swear immediately when they got that correct. So, which is wild because they got a good piece of information. Like, this is really valuable,
Hmm.
but it changed their whole perspective of the thing that they were working with immediately, and then they had to re-reason their way through their puzzle. It was just the best response ever, and that was when I knew we had some magic in the box.
Yeah, I think it's essentially kind of maybe like golf, where you're playing against the course, but you're also playing against an opponent who's also playing against the course, and then you compare scores at the end. But also the big reveal is a little bit different because you've got at some point got to think like, do I have it solved? And now I'm playing against you. Do I think you have it solved? And so it's a really interesting tension where it goes between like I'm trying to solve this puzzle and now I'm trying to solve you, which is I think really my favorite part of the game. Jason, what do you think? What was your proudest moment for this game?
The one of the most important parts of the game generally is that when you align in that initial question, when you flip the card face up and it locks in forever, it's it is such an important component to this game. It creates what you just described. Like it locks in information and it changes the game from a memory game to now it's like a strategy game and a little bit more yomi. So like your puzzle shrinks as you get more information so that it's not it so it doesn't overload folks. And I feel like when you give a demo to someone, the first time you explain that that locks in forever and now you don't need to worry about it, there's just this like sigh of relief. They're like, oh, this isn't just a memory game. This is instead, I'm trying to do logic rules, and the context of those rules are going to change over time, which is a sort of magic. And even it, we talked about the headspace necessary to not only know what your puzzle is and know how close you are, but start to know how close your opponent is by being able to see those face up cards on the table and not required to like to remember where things are. It really allows for that possibility on the end of the game when you have that additional brain space because you're so close and that something becomes a 50-50. Now you can engage with the other player's puzzle a little bit, whereas during the early game it's very difficult to do that because you have so much of a mental load on your side of the table. So it does this thing. If you were to eye track where like your pupils are, you're like face down, and as the game goes it feels like you raise up to
Mhm.
look at your opponent a little bit. And I think that that's a kind of magic. And and if I was going to name a second thing that I'm super proud of is that when giving demos, you can see this evidenced by the fact that folks in the audience get to play along, and it is actually fun to be a third wheel in logic and lore where you're like, I don't know how to done that, or like, oh, you clearly got this wrong. It's fun to watch games of logic and lore, and that's the type of thing. As a crowd will gather and you give a demo, folks just like, oh, I want to be in there, I want to be in the hot seat. And yeah, that's a kind of magic that we feel very fortunate to find.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think definitely Logic and Lore is a game that has so many new innovations in this two-player space. It's I'm not the biggest fan of two-player games, but I can't stop playing Logic and Lore because it's really it's a puzzle. It's competitive. It's cooperative in some ways, and there's so much room for growth that I don't think we're going to see the end of Logic and Lore anytime soon. Like I mentioned, I think there's some co-op potential, there's some competitive potential, there's some tournament potential here. Um, it from Starlight mode as a strategic, kind of very tight strategy game to there's the sky's not even the limit when it comes to the potential we can do here. I'm super excited for where Logic and Lore is going to go. Um, so we're getting close to the end of our time. Let's talk maybe about where, if people want to interact with you guys, where is the best place they can find you besides for at Gen Con next year? You'll be at the Weird Giraffe Games booth doing demos of Logic and Lore. We'll have the second edition out for sale there. But if they want to interact with you before that, so Darren, where could they find you online?
We have a website, dirtlegames.com, so you can check out all of the games that we're working on that we're ready to share. So we have some prototypes out there that people want to look at those, they sure can. There's a link on the dirtlegames.com to join our Discord server. We have a group of people in that server we call our Dirtlers, and they're very valuable to us, very important. They are playtesters and our critics and our biggest fans. And we appreciate them a whole lot. You can also find us on Instagram if you want to reach out to us there, and just look up dirtlegames.com, and we're easy to find.
Yeah, and they can find you on the shelves of their local game store with Rowdy Partners, which I haven't played yet, but I've heard is amazing, and I really want to play that. And the Unmatched games that you guys worked on. So, and then you'll see Logic and Lore there towards the middle of next year. But they could definitely find you on the Kickstarter right now. Jason, you look like you want to say something.
Oh no, sorry, I was just pointing at the different games
Oh,
in the
okay.
background.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I had them on the shelf, so I was
Oh,
pointing that.
yeah. We could zoom in. On there
Yeah,
they
Hey,
are.
there
we
they
spend a
are.
lot of our time on Discord, so that is definitely a way to find us. A little bit on Twitter and some on Instagram, and in general, come in and speak to us and say hi. We super love getting to meet folks that enjoy games generally. So we'll play anything, even not our stuff. So
Yeah.
let's.
And then in the meantime, uh, go on over and check out the Kickstarter for Logic and Lore. I have the graphic is down below. You can go to weirdgiraffegames.com/logic, and you will find it. We have 8 days left as of this recording, but it's gonna be ending soon. As of have watched this, and it's probably already ended. But go to the website anyway, and you'll find, as you can see on down below, that there is some dice in Logic and Lore Variance, and we're looking for the color that they should be. So comment your favorite color on the Kickstarter comments, and we'll put up a poll in the last few days to get the color of those dice. We're also doing some interesting logic puzzles on our Facebook page. The Would You Flip puzzle series. We're going to be doing daily puzzles using the logic and lore mechanisms, where you can comment about it's your turn. Where would you actually flip in this board state based on these notes? Um, we'll be releasing the results of the last one. The question for me, I think the answer is it's 50-50, so I would flip because I'll take those odds any day. Uh, so I think that's all we've got for today. Darren, Jason, do you have any last words you want to share with the
Yeah,
viewers?
yeah. In general, I want to say that I'm really grateful to Weird Giraffe Games and to
Mhm.
Darren and to the response from the Kickstarter backers. It's so incredibly heart-filling to see the response, and just over the moon. So thank you all.
Excellent.
Uh,
Darren, go ahead.
yeah, I will say also thank you to Weird Giraffe. The people out in the audience may not know all the work that you do, but we get to see a little bit of it, and we know that you're putting a lot of great work into this campaign, and it is nice to see, as it's our baby, and
Mhm.
we want it to be treated well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I'll echo that too. Thank you so much to the team here at Weird Giraffe Games. It's not just me; it's also Carla and Caitlin and Justin and everybody else who has joined the launch list and is helping us share the campaign with their friends. You guys are what's making this possible. So I really appreciate all the support. I think we're up to 1,200 backers. We've got 500 people on the launch list. We have more than 3,000 people who are following the campaign. Everybody who's doing that is really helping us to be successful. So go on out there. If you haven't shared this campaign with a friend you think is likes puzzles and deduction, I highly recommend that you share, because there is everybody who plays has told me they want to play again immediately. This I think is some magic in this game here that is just amazing to experience, and I want to make sure that everybody has the option to experience it. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Darren and Jason, for taking the time to help us understand logic and lore and look back. I learned a lot, and I think our viewers definitely did too. And I'm excited to see everybody in the comments. Thanks a lot. We'll see you later.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.